Welcome, everyone. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules today. Hopefully, everyone had a great Memorial Day weekend. I know that Shannon and I are very excited to kind of have this discussion with you around the healthcare industry, where we are today, and then how things are just moving forward post-COVID-19. I would like to thank Stetson University, as well as the Alumni Association, Becca, Amy, and Olivia for helping to support Shannon and I over the weekend while we're busy with our families and try to get everything situated with logistics. So thank you. And I guess we'll go ahead and get started. So as you are looking at the agenda today, there are a few key areas that Shannon and I will be very consistent in our overall messaging. One is the overall business, our respective organizations. The second would be the call to action. What's happening today with COVID-19 in our individual industries and business. What we believe the future of healthcare is moving forward. And then the last two areas are just key for those individuals that are looking to embark into the industry or are newly Stetson grads or will be graduating pretty soon. It's what are those opportunities for you to get engaged into the industry and be able to break through with one of those respective jobs. And then last but not least, how has Stetson University and overall athletics prepared us for the industry? All right. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and start the presentation. So as we look at my respective organization, Abbott Labs, Abbott was founded in 1888 by Wallace Abbott. Globally today, Abbott employs over 100,000 individuals in roughly 160 countries, creating breakthrough products in diagnostics, medical device, diabetes care, nutrition, and what I would say overall branded generic pharmaceuticals. More recently, Abbott has created innovations specific to COVID-19 with FDA-approved advancements in rapid-acting and antibody testing. So while I'm not at liberty to discuss specifics aligned to those unique innovations, what I can say is that I'm proud to work and represent an organization that prides itself on not only innovations that help patients live a healthier and fuller life, but those where it's proactive management for patients' health and that provides a long-lasting result in overall health outcomes. Specifically, when we're thinking of nutrition, which is the business unit that I support as a leader at Abbott, early identification of patients who have a need for nutrition, whether in the hospital, ambulatory space, or community, is where we thrive as a market leader. So when we take a look at some of the overall therapies, and I won't walk through every single piece of those, or nutritional supplementation can and does make an impact on patients' lives in a multitude of areas. Those are pre and post surgery, those that are somewhat malnourished, those that are looking for weight management, even down to infant and new mothers. When we look at collaboration and advancements and where we are today, as well as where we're looking to move in the future, remote monitoring of patients' overall health care will be a key place that is going to be efficient, especially for those like times of today where we have stay-at-home orders and are asked to not go out into the general public. Those that have automatic risk stratifications to identify if an individual is at a higher risk for an event, health economic outcomes research to support the need for additional health outcomes, and then also nutrition-focused algorithms. So I sat down to myself and thought about, okay, over the last 15 years that I've been in the industry, what has been a consistent theme when it looks at athletics as well as the healthcare industry. And I thought of somewhat of this quote, and that's, in the eyes of healthcare, we're one team after a common goal, and that's excellent care for patients that meets quality standards while providing a level of consistency across many social classes. And I think as we are talking about some of those social classes, it takes us into the next section. Here's our call to action, and this is something that's happening today overall across the country. The two specific areas that I really want to focus on today are social determinants of health and then also food insecurities. So I'll give you a chance to look at the first diagram for social determinants of health before I move forward. All right. So as we're living in the midst of this pandemic, COVID-19 has shined a bright light on those living with an economic, social, or education disparity. And I would say before the pandemic, we were slowly working towards solutions that could assist and support each individual or family. But now we're forced to think outside the box and innovate at a rapid pace to save patient lives. And so the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services view these disparities as social determinants of health, which are, where we are born, grow, live, work, and eventually where we pass away. So there's simply social and economic disparities that places individuals and communities at an inherent disadvantage to healthcare and resources like education, physical environment, employment, and social support networks. So when we look at the overall health outcomes that's listed below in orange, this is where when I say we as in those individuals that are in healthcare can make the biggest difference on patients' lives. So overall mortality, life expectancy, healthcare expenditures, all of the above. So when I think of specifically in my line of business, when we think of Medicaid and medical and therapeutic nutrition tailored with lifestyle changes or modifications, food insecurity comes to mind. So if you ask yourself, essentially, what are food insecurities? Well, they're an economic and social condition of limited or uncertain access to adequate food with either disrupted eating patterns or reduced food intake. And today, where we look at it, there's a lot of families that are impacted by food insecurities. Just 5 years ago, 12.7% of U.S. households were affected. That's 15.8 million U.S. households overall looking into it today. Something as simple as adequate nutrition tailored with proper education can decrease the cost of healthcare and various chronic diseases. So you ask yourself, how can we mitigate the loss in access to appropriate resources? And here's where I think we have the biggest opportunity moving into the future. And especially now, I can only speak for myself who have two kids, 9 and 11. I didn't think I would be a remote teacher 2 months ago, but I think we've all had to adjust, pivot, and do things virtually, and we're all learning, right? So I think that's the same thing that we're doing here today when we're thinking of the future of healthcare. So I will look at two specific areas, virtual and remote care. So looking at telehealth, and if you're unfamiliar of what telehealth is, telehealth uses digital information and communication from computers and mobile devices to access healthcare remotely to manage your health. These may be technologies, I would say, you use from home or that your doctor uses to support your overall healthcare. Over the last 10 years, lifestyle chronic diseases such as, I think the biggest ones that we think of, heart disease, I would say diabetes and COPD, that are very familiar with the most of us here that are on the call, is that accounted for 81% of all hospital admissions and 76% of physician visits. It's a huge cost for the American people today. So when I think of the overall benefits for telehealth, it's making healthcare accessible to people who live in rural or isolated communities. So if you are very familiar recently in the news with the Navajo people, they've been very affected by COVID-19 just to their ability of not having access to certain medical needs.
So Joe, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Good. So, hey, I had a question. So how does your team use, or or incorporate nutrition into telehealth? How would you functionally do that?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Shannon. I think the biggest thing for us, because sometimes nutrition is overlooked, but when we think about it, 70% of our immune system comes from the gut. So that's everything that you eat, right? So it becomes really a basis and foundation for your overall healthcare. So the biggest piece that we do today is really conduct a ton of education for top executives in hospital systems that may not utilize nutrition up front. And we make it as part of a patient's overall care plan moving into today's market. So when you think of COVID-19 and patients that are receiving overall health care from their individual provider via telehealth, it's highly important to have nutrition as part of that process. So we incorporate that process through education, through lifestyle modifications and changes, along with additional research to support their needs and efforts when it comes to healthcare.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So as you think of the additional benefits for telehealth, I would say the last for me is providing overall support for self-management of healthcare. Moving into this process, utilizing what we know digitally, every individual across the nation will have better access to their overall history in healthcare, which will allow physicians and yourself to make timely decisions that can really save your life. So what is remote patient monitoring? So I think this is the really cool part. I get really excited when I think of remote patient monitoring, because I think sometimes we don't realize how often we are already doing this today, in our respective homes, when we're walking, when we're working out. But it's basically the use of portable, or I would say high-tech devices such as blood pressure monitors, weighted scales, continuous glucose monitors, and other smart devices like your Apple Watch or your iPhone. And when we look back at social determinants of health and food insecurities, the benefits of remotely monitoring patients are listed here. And I think some of those are the most important are improving patients' overall engagement. That allows each individual patient to feel as if they have more ownership of their respective health and life, increase patient access to healthcare providers. And then what I would say is the last piece, and Shannon and I have had further discussions about this before, is that advanced artificial intelligence with driven analytics. Those driven analytics provide so much information for healthcare providers to really treat patients in a timely fashion. So when we look at your personal lifestyle, including activity and nutrition, when we look at remote patient monitoring, all of that information is gathered onto one platform to track and relay data to healthcare providers on metrics such as glucose levels, heart rate, blood pressure, and blood oxygen levels. So if you're very familiar with, I would say like your MyFitnessPal, the Lose It app, there's so many other mobile applications that are available today on the market that collects all of this data that we can now use for your overall health care. Nutrition and overall lifestyle can become the foundation of your health care and critical decisions for healthcare providers to care for patients based on their medical history and monitored snapshot of these unique markers. So utilizing big data and analytics can become scary. But on platforms working in unison to gather information on thousands of patients, this provides healthcare providers the ability to leverage predictive analytics that can determine patients at risk for chronic disease progression. So I'll say this just in this portion of the presentation. In closing, when you think of telehealth, telemedicine, and remote patient monitoring, think of these resources as additional tools in the healthcare provider's toolbox that allows them to make sound decisions based off your medical history, lifestyle, nutritional intake, and artificial intelligence backed by evidence-based practices from thousands or even hundreds of thousands of patients who have unique markers similar to yours. In taking proactive measures to treat patients in real time with medical alerts, especially those who are living with a chronic condition, could prove to have lasting results and positive outcomes. Ultimately, that's living a longer and healthier life while enjoying time with those you love. So with that being said, this concludes my portion of the presentation. And I would like to pass the ball on to Shannon Mays, who will speak in depth a little bit more about his business and the overall healthcare field.
Joe, I have a question for you before you pass it along to me. So,
okay,
what were the repercussions of COVID-19 on your business? I know you and I kind of spoke about what was going on in your world, but your business is further or earlier along the continuum of care for patients, and you guys are just doing things a little bit differently than sort of what I'm doing on a daily basis. So what happened to your business during COVID or during this time?
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of leads back to what we were speaking about before. I mean, I feel very fortunate that my organization really has brought about a number of innovations that have kept us, I would say, extremely busy, more busy, I would say, than we probably have been in the last, 3 to 4 years.
Wow.
And in fact, when it comes to nutrition, you think of immune health and immune support, our nutrition business is extremely busy. Really just providing additional education to healthcare providers across the organization, across the country. But also, I mean, it's logistics, like really providing all of the nutritional products that we have for hospitals, ambulatory institutions that have patients that, have a need for nutrition. You think about it, just the logistics of an individual patient who has cancer and is going through cancer treatment during COVID-19 and are being, asked to stay at home with social distancing because they are at a high compromise way that they can be affected by COVID-19, right? So just being able to provide the necessary resources to that individual provides, some of those logistics. But, I can say that I'm very proud to work for an organization that really pride ourselves in making sure that the patient comes first and working through those things. So we're extremely busy. I would say this year, because of COVID-19, has been one of the, busiest years that, me and my team, I have, 2 regional directors with a number of, regional account managers all across the country, and we are extremely busy just working through, what our customers need today. So, I mean, I would say I'm fortunate because I know that the industry has taken a turn for some organizations, but we're really busy right now.
Gotcha. Well, thank you. That kind of sets me up a little bit. I'm going to take it from here. So, yeah, just a quick overview of who I am. So, Shannon Mays, Stetson grad, 04, and subsequently completed my MBA in 06. Currently employed by Medtronic, and I, for up until actually this week is my first week in a new role as an ASC territory manager. I've been focused on as a sales representative prior to that. So yeah, just wanted to sort of take the same track that Joe took and just sort of give an overview of my business, a little bit about the company. I want you all to ask questions. If you have any questions, please just chime in. I don't want to give information that you guys aren't certain of. So if you have any questions, just please ask any questions. So Medtronic is actually a really crazy and interesting story. So it's similar to that Jeff Bezos meme that you see on social media, where Jeff Bezos is in his garage, and there's an Amazon poster because he was creating Amazon in his garage. Literally, Medtronic was created in somebody's garage about 70 years ago. The co-founder of the company created invented the first battery-powered pacemaker in his garage in Minnesota. So, it's literally one of those amazing stories that, somebody created this business 70 years ago out of their garage. And right now, we have a market cap of, $127+ billion. It's mind-boggling to even, think that's even possible. But, that's where the company started. And, right now we're considered the world's largest medical device company. We have operations in 150 countries. We employ over 90,000 people. And anecdotally, they say that our therapies support 75 million people per year. On the slide here, I've noted some of the therapies and technologies. Technologies obviously include some, pacemakers, stents, spinal cord stimulators, deep brain stimulation devices, CGM, which Joe mentioned, which is continuous glucose monitoring for diabetics. Obviously, many more devices. For me personally, my focus has been on spinal implants and spinal care, which includes screws, rods, plates, different biological materials, and things of that nature.
So Shannon, tell me, in your line of business, what does a normal day look like for you?
That's a good question. So a normal day is, I'm up early. I am in surgery. I wear, I wear scrubs. I'm a part of the surgical team. I'm in surgical cases, obviously specifically spine cases, and I help the surgeon with the support and the use of the product. So, I'm, coming from Stetson, I'm a business guy. I had to learn all the clinical side of the business and medicine to be able to, sell my products and support them properly. So yeah, I'm in surgery, on a daily basis. That's been my last, 14 years, but my new role will be a little bit different, and we can, sort of talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, I'm in surgery every day. That's what we do. So wanted to continue down that line. So consequences of COVID. So for us, COVID was, has been devastating. Luckily, Medtronic is such a large organization that we are financially sound enough to be able to, withstand, these challenges. But if you take a look at these, these 10 procedures that I have here on this slide, the number 2, the second one, lumbar and thoracic spinal fusion, that's what I do. So, this is a snapshot of, during COVID, sort of the, in the market in terms of what was happening. We were 81% down. That's, how can a business, actually survive that way? And all of these, basically everything in red is medical device. That's the industry. All those red ones are medical device. So, to say it's been challenging would be an understatement. I went from supporting, multiple surgeries, on a daily basis to, doing nothing. We were literally sidelined and at home. So, yeah, our two businesses, Joe, you and I spoke about this, during, I reached a couple weeks back just to see what was going on with you. And, you shared that, here with the crowd, but, our businesses were in complete different areas, due to the virus. But I will say this, Medtronic is a large organization. Our focus is on medical device, but, we've done some really, interesting and crazy collaborations during this time. We actually make ventilators. It's not my business and not my division, but Medtronic outsourced, their instructions on how to produce one of their ventilators. They open sourced it to the entire world. Another thing that Medtronic decided to do was to partner with Elon Musk and Tesla to figure out ways how to develop, ventilators and to produce them a lot quicker. So Medtronic has figured out ways to, provide goodwill during this time, but, financially, the business, has had some challenges. I do want to point out a couple of things just for perspective for everybody. So these top 10 inpatient procedures account for over 50% of the total payments made to hospitals. So I want you all to look at that slide and just digest that again. Those 10 procedures account for over 50% of all of the dollars that an actual hospital generates. I mean, that is staggering. And if you look at that, obviously most of those are down significantly. Another thing that I found really interesting and I wanted to point out was on this percutaneous coronary intervention, as well as diagnostic catheterization. So Medtronic has a cardiovascular business, and also we deal with stroke care. Those numbers were down significantly. Okay, so that doesn't mean that people were not having heart attacks and strokes. It just means that people were not comfortable with going into the hospital setting for treatment. So, the effects of this virus, obviously weren't just, on the financial health of a business, or even people that were directly affected by the virus. But, we've also seen some, staggering challenges with people that were just afraid to seek out early care for treatments or for issues that could have been treated. So people were just, they would stay home if they had issues if they had, a feeling of a stroke, or if they had heart issues, they would stay home, and a lot of people have died. So the consequences, have been quite crazy. Let me move to the next one. So yeah, I want to pop in and sort of talk about some of the technology and system innovation that I see moving forward in medical device sales in particular. So robotics is a huge opportunity and a huge part of what's happening in med device. A number of things sort of make it appealing to clinicians. Robotics will provide a higher level of accuracy and precision. Inherently, that should reduce costs. If you're more accurate, you don't have to worry about revision. Surgery increases cost in the system. So yeah, I mean, there have been robotic surgeries going on for many years in general surgery and gynecological surgery, but that's now expanded into orthopedics and spinal surgery, brain surgery, and also dental surgery. So robotics quite quickly now. It provides to share a little video. Let me see if I can figure out this thing. Everybody's my video. All right, I got some squiggly lines here on my on the PowerPoint. Some technical difficulties. Let me try to stop sharing, maybe. All right, try that. Let me cue this back up. All right, so are you able to see my screen now?
Yes. And then
Yep.
Perfect. Great. All right, great. So yeah, that was just sort of an example of, some of the robotic surgery that's going on. That was specific to spine. When I started, we wouldn't even, that was not even in the realm of possibility in terms of, doing somebody's spinal surgery with robotics. I mean, everything, was traditionally done, by hand with, using, X-ray. That's, that is, the standard of care. But companies like Medtronic and other organizations are pushing robotics for better outcomes. So we are starting to see that technology. We're currently doing robotic cases as we speak with that technology that you just saw. So yeah, that is the future. And I think where we are with robotics right now, I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg. We are going to take robotics places we just can't conceptualize at this point. The next point I wanted to mention was in terms of technological innovation is AI and machine learning. Again, it's this is one of those things that we've been talking about, sort of supercomputers for many years. They have started to refine this technology, and it will just allow for better data mining and potentially better and more accurate diagnosis and decision making in healthcare. I see a question that popped up. Somebody not able to see the video. Was everybody able to see it? Is everybody able to hear? So, Amy, we're getting some people that are having some audio issues. Are we good now?
Yeah, I saw the video, and I know just before the video you were breaking up a little bit, but we can always send the link in the follow-up email too. Okay,
perfect. So I'll just continue. The next really cool innovation, in my purview is AR and VR, augmented and virtual reality. So it's a fairly new technology. Coming in med tech, there are a lot of companies that are looking at the technology and investigating it, and some are obviously currently using it. But I think that it will have a place in med tech, and it will continue to grow. I'll just give you an example. So obviously we're social distancing right now. Under normal circumstances, if I'm training a surgeon on a new procedure, what we would do is, we would fly surgeons from around the world to, let's say New York City, or let's say Miami. We will do a lab with a cadaveric specimen, and we will, everybody will be face-to-face doing a procedure. So imagine the cost savings, and also just the accessibility of doing, a virtual reality, remote training session where, if you're in Boston, I can be in Florida, and I can run you through an entire surgical technique virtually. Think about just the cost savings, obviously. Think about the detail we can go into. Think about just the control that we would have that we just don't have with, a cadaveric specimen, for example. Another really cool thing, I actually read an article today about virtual reality. They're using it, I believe, in a hospital in Massachusetts for patients with pain. So this particular article spoke about an individual who she's a pain patient. She hasn't been able to swim in over 10 years, and they bring her through a virtual reality simulation of swimming. Her pain is reduced. She has the function of swimming, and overall her health is just benefiting from, you know, a virtual reality session. So really cool, interesting things are happening in that space. We're seeing the effects of, you know, kind of a virtual world on the brain and how it may be helpful. So, you know, a lot of interesting stuff's going on there. And, you know, specific to augmented reality. So, you know, augmented reality is basically if you are in a live session and you know, let's say you have some type of glasses on, and we are augmenting, you know, reality by adding, you know, different tools and different virtual, you know, models or things into your normal space. So, you know, for example, you know, if a surgeon's operating on a patient, let's say they're doing a spine surgery, you know, we can download different things into, you know, a screen that the surgeon would have on their head that would show different techniques, different things that they should avoid, a number of different pieces of information that, you know, is typically stuck in the surgeon's head, we can provide to them in an augmented reality setting. So really cool stuff, you know, in that space. And then there's, you know, there's systems innovations that are, you know, far overdue, and some, you know, some are sort of accelerating because of COVID, but, you know, we are slowly moving into a value-based healthcare world. So, you know, what the current model that we have right now is a fee-for-service model. And that model basically rewards or, you know, compensates healthcare individuals on quantity and not necessarily the quality of the care, you know. And so, you know, inherently that is, you know, that is sort of a backward system, right? So, you know, we want somebody to get paid well if they get us better. And, you know, that's sort of the premise on, you know, in terms of value-based healthcare. You know, it's important for us to slowly start shifting into that model, or really not slowly. We need to aggressively shift in that model, especially as, you know, healthcare technology professionals. You know, anything we innovate or create, we need to be cognizant of value-based healthcare and innovations that will make people better, but, you know, also make costs less. So I think as you know, sort of stewards in the healthcare world, we need to you know, behave in a manner that's only going to help everybody. So value-based healthcare is something that if you're not hearing it, you're going to start hearing it a lot. And a lot of different insurance companies and healthcare companies will start moving payment models in that direction, which I think is, personally, I think it's good for everybody, you know. And so also the last one is migration to ambulatory surgery centers. You know, some folks on this call may have had surgeries, small surgeries in the past, and may not have even thought about it. But, you know, a lot of those surgeries are done in a surgery center setting, and you know, so costs are contained a lot better in surgery centers. You know, specific to COVID, you know, right now there's a backlog of elective surgery, you know, that the hospitals are tracking in the millions of people who had surgeries scheduled but canceled surgeries. What we are seeing is that the clinician as well as the patient want to redirect those surgeries into ambulatory surgery centers because of fear of, you know, potential contraction of the virus. So we are seeing a shift, you know, slowly into that setting. So again, that's a system innovation, because when I started with in this business, there are certain surgeries that were always done in a hospital. Now I don't see any of those surgeries. They've moved into an ambulatory or office-based setting. And you know, my business in particular with spine and even a lot of cardiovascular procedures and hips and knees and things of that nature, they are going to slowly continue to move into the ambulatory surgery market. So it's a big shift. And, you know, speaking to me specifically, I've just taken on a new role sort of focused on ambulatory surgery centers, because we see it as such a large growth large growth area for healthcare, and we want to focus on it and figure out a good strategy to address the surgery center. All right, and now on to opportunities. So Joe and I are going to tackle this one together. Joe, make sure you unmute yourself. But generally speaking, look, I think that there are going to be, there will continue to be a lot of opportunities. So, just my personal example, in the midst of COVID, I have been, hired and promoted into a new business unit within my own organization. So COVID has not stopped hiring. Honestly speaking, I think COVID's just, uncovered a lot of issues that we've had in the system, which inherently will provide opportunities for companies like mine and Joe's. So I think that there will continue to be hires. I know that there will continue to be. I think that non-traditional hires will be a big factor. I think people that would not have normally been considered for some of these companies, I think they will be sought out, and I think you will have opportunities within this space because as I spoke about before, previously, we were just doing carpentry work. It was obviously healthcare, but it was not as high tech as it is now. So I think there's going to be a merging of high tech with healthcare like we haven't seen in the past. So I think there's going to be a lot of non-traditional hires. Joe, you have any thoughts on some of that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it's just in the sector that we're working with right now. I think predictive analytics, when it comes to really understanding what type of individuals have a higher propensity for an event, such as a heart attack, would be the key here. And so in sharing a number of data points virtually, you can understand where cybersecurity would be a big play as well, especially in the healthcare sector, and understanding how to really protect your own personal data that's being shared back and forth. I know that with the predictive analytics, it's something that we're seeing in a fast movement where, let's say, for example, you're an individual who is over the age of 60 and you have, COPD and diabetes. And based on the number of markers that the healthcare provider is looking at you, predictive analytics can identify if you are at a certain weight, or if you are at a certain range when it comes to your overall glucose levels, you will be at a higher risk for something such as a heart attack or being admitted to the hospital. And being able to receive certain analytics and alerts to a healthcare provider in real time on a 24-hour basis allows us to be able to really do more with the information that we have. And I think that's where that statistician, the economist, will really come into play in understanding how to interpret the analytics that we're seeing. And then overall, independent contractors. So if you have a unique skill set, whereas in past years, especially when it comes to the healthcare space where we're in, you typically would have to have some type of sales experience, or you would have to have some type of experience in an internship. Look, I mean, a lot of individuals are coming in with great skill sets, especially those that are coders or those that can create mobile apps. They're able to embark and get engaged to this space that's really a non-traditional hire.
Sure.
So as we look at the overall opportunities as well, there's a unique space here too for the diversity and inclusion of women. And Shannon and I decided to add just a few places here where you can be able to not only become part of a social network, but really understand who's hiring, what jobs are out there, what jobs that you need to meet certain qualifications in order for you to even be a part of the interviewing process. I actually just saw, as of yesterday, the National Sales Network was hosting a virtual career fair for a number of organizations. So even during this time, and I think Shannon kind of spoke to it before, when we're all social distancing and you would think that a number of companies aren't hiring, they're hosting career fairs for great talent to really seek out talent and individuals who they can get prepared for post-COVID-19. I would say I'm part of the Healthcare Business Women's Association as a mentor for leading healthcare women. And it is a great, great organization, top executives that are part of it, great minds that are from multiple parts of organizations in the healthcare space. If you are looking to get into a number of these, definitely do your research and look on to see where there's an opportunity for you to embark into the industry.
So we got a couple of questions. Marie Cloutier, how do you break into one of these sales jobs without experience? All the positions, even the lowest level ones, seem to ask for OR experience. How do you get OR experience if you can't get the job despite lots of sales experience in healthcare?
Good question.
Yeah, I can take. So I had no OR experience. When I got the job. So it's possible. I think my route. I know my route is not traditional, and I was lucky in many senses, but it's possible. I think having experience is one thing, but having the right sales experience is important, especially in medical device. Certain sales experience we've seen they don't see as valuable as others. But Marie, I'm sure you're aware. There are some of these medical device schools, if you will, that they've developed around the country where you can enroll in one of these schools and sort of get placed into with some of these companies. But generally speaking, OR experience is nice, but I don't think it's mandatory. And but I think your sales experience is a huge thing, but it needs to be in the right space. And you can ask another question if you like, or we can talk a little bit more about that offline. Joe, do you want to read the next question from Michael Wickert?
Yeah, Michael says, for artificial intelligence, machine learning, and AR, how does the sales differ from med devices? Does Medtronic sell any of these technologies, or is it typically tech companies working with med device companies? I'll let you go ahead after I kind of do my rebuttal, because I know it's specific for you.
Yeah, so right now, so there are a couple other, you can do some Google searches on the AR, VR stuff. There's nothing that I am aware of that Medtronic currently sells. Again, Medtronic's such a monstrous company that, would I be surprised if they're working on something? I wouldn't, but I'm not aware of it. But there are some cool companies that are doing those things. And so you're asking, is it typically a tech company or med device? So the interesting thing is, I think these two businesses are sort of merging. So I feel like Medtronic is slowly going to become a tech company. The lines are a little bit blurred in terms of what these organizations are. But the ones that I'm thinking of in particular, they have positioned themselves as a medical device company, if you will, but their primary product is an AR product focused on healthcare. So I think the lines are a little bit blurred there. But yeah, I think if you do some Google searches on virtual reality and augmented reality in healthcare, you may be able to find some things. Marie says she has 15 years of sales experience in healthcare and IT. Yeah, look, so if you're in IT, like we mentioned, SaaS in here and coders. I think there may be more opportunities in the future. And honestly, I was super lucky, to we can talk about sort of my trajectory within the organization, but this was my first job out of after leaving Stetson, and I happened to land a job with the biggest company in the world. That's not normal. I was lucky. So I think that typically you'll have an opportunity with some of the smaller companies, and some of the small, if it's smaller or large company, the experience may be just the same. There's no sort of judgment on the size of the organization, but I think as the companies get a little bit larger, they have developed sort of a model in terms of what they see and expect. Like I said, I'm completely lucky. Under normal circumstances, I would have never gotten the job that I did get. The next question here is, what's the SDR program? I'm not. I've heard of that. You're gonna have to. Give me the actual name of it, but I think that maybe what you're talking about is maybe one of these early onboarding programs. But Alex, you'll have to reach out to me or type in something else and give me some more specifics on that. We're gonna get back to some of these questions, Joe. Let's continue on the slide. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
Let's just want to touch on some of these, but everybody's questions. So next, we're just going to go into industry correlation to athletics and kind of our experience at at Stetson. So and it may answer some of the questions here. So I wanted to throw up this quote: individually we are one drop, together we are an ocean. It's a really cool quote, and it just speaks to teamwork and how we need to work as a team in order to get anything done. So I could not go without putting this picture up here, to at least show what I used to look like at one point. But this is me at Stetson. And yeah, so I wanted to just talk about what our time and what athletics kind of taught us, and how it's been an advantage for me in my current role and in my industry. So teamwork, obviously, cooperation and working in group dynamic, it's a huge thing. Medtronic specifically is such a big organization, a matrix organization with a number of different, sort of siloed entities. And, a lot of times with customers, meaning the hospital or clinicians, we need to be able to break down those walls and work together as a team. So, the teamwork aspect, which, obviously, I've been in a team setting since before, going to Stetson to play soccer, but, that is a huge part. We are, this is a team effort. You can't be sort of just an individual superstar. You need to be able to work, in a team environment. So that was a huge thing. Discipline, my experience with customers and consistency has been a huge part of, my world, especially when I was in, the specific sales role. So I had to have the discipline to be at my cases on time and early, and I had to have the discipline to, make sure that the equipment that we needed was ready to go for somebody's surgery. I had to think of, that patient as, my mother on the operating room table, and I want to make sure everything was there. And I had to have the discipline to do that day in and day out, because, my customers had choices. They didn't have to choose me to invite to their operating room. They could choose a number of other competitors that have similar products. So, discipline's a huge thing. Competitiveness, goes right along with that. If you're in sales, sales in particular, you have to be competitive. Now, there are other routes into med tech and med device. My pathway was sales, so I'm competitive, and I think that was attractive to to my employer. Overcoming adversity, a huge thing, especially in sales, right? So I get told no way more than I get told yes, and I had to figure out how to be able to come back from that. Tons of adversity, at Stetson. I just had some really crazy years where I just had so many injuries, like super frustrating, some of the most frustrating times of my life with the injuries that, I had, but I had to figure out a way to overcome that adversity. I think it served me well, in my time in med tech. And, another huge one for me personally was just, being able to have a diverse cultural perspective. So, I came to Stetson from South Florida, and it was a culture shock, coming to this small town it was just very different for me and not what I was accustomed to. But, I embraced it, and I learned a lot from people that were different from me, and that were from different places than I was from. And, just going back to the athletic part, I had teammates from, England and Ireland and Brazil and, a number of different countries. So I got to learn different cultures and perspectives. And it served me really well in this field because, my customers are from different countries. Not all of our customers look alike, which is why, diversity is a important thing in this field, especially now. So yeah, I think those specific things, have really helped me out, in this field. So I'm gonna push along to Joe's slide.
All right. Thanks, Shannon. I think, when we talk about how athletics and healthcare kind of combines and aligns together, that teamwork approach to really caring for patients is really important. Making sure that there's no I in team and that everyone is working to the better good of the patient. So I would say that is one of the biggest things for us on teamwork. For me, it's the leadership. I was fortunate enough to be a captain on, at Stetson University for 2 years, my last 2 years at Stetson. And I'll be quite honest, it's really prepared me to be an effective leader today. I have about 22 people on my team today, from managers to account managers and representatives. And I think one of the biggest things too is just making sure that as a leader, you're someone that's always constantly learning, even from the individuals that you are leading. I think for leadership too, it's big to be just a great listener. I think the more you listen, the more you're able to really engage and understand what's important to individuals. I think it kind of goes back to what Shannon was saying, competitive edge. That sports, competitive edge, wanting to always be better than yourself the previous day is a key thing, especially when you're in sales. Having that competitive edge will allow you to break through some of those times when you're having frustration and you're getting the no's. And I think for us is when we're looking to sign contracts in, the hospital systems or, larger ambulatory systems, don't necessarily agree with you or don't think that what you have to offer is best. So, just being able to have that competitive edge to be able to push forward. I think for me, confident taking risks. This year makes 13 years with Abbott, close to 15 years in the healthcare field, and I've taken risks, and I would say calculated risks every 3 to 4 years. I started really leading this organization, this portion of our business, and it was something that was new. It was something that I had presented maybe 4 or 5 years prior to, taking on this portion of the business, that it would be a great fit for us, a great fit for nutrition, how, individuals are very, understanding of what their nutritional status is, or if they're not, they lead a great lifestyle and are really tracking that data. And so for me, it's really taking confident risks and really understanding what you have to bring and offer to the table. And then last but not least, I'll leave this for a number of you who have asked a number of questions of, okay, how do I embark and get into, the industry? How do I break through that window or that glass ceiling in order for me to, obtain one of these sales jobs? My experience is a little different than Shannon's, right? I keep this number in my head to make sure that I always have perspective of where I've been and exactly where I want to go and continue to move forward. I went through over 40 interviews before I got my first job out of Stetson, right? So I think that process and going through those interviews and never giving up allowed me to now the shining light and what allows me to be who I am, being authentically me, along with having that passion and that grit that comes from athletics, along with playing at Stetson University. Stetson prides itself in academics and really and truly having student athletes. And I know for sure, especially from a number of talks that I've had with other student athletes that have now gone and been past with Stetson, as well as current and past students, is, that student athlete is really there. Shannon and I, we've known each other because we were on campus at the same time. And I don't think it's just a coincidence that we're both in the same industry or are thriving in that industry today. So I feel very proud and fortunate to have gone to a university that has pushed forward with student athletes.
Great.
All right. So with that being said, I'm not sure if we have a lot of time for questions, but thought it would be a great time to open up for questions.
So let me take a look at some of these. So we got Alexander now. Rodney Frank, as someone trying to break into the sales industry, in your opinion, do employers see consultative selling, need-based selling, or both? Thank you both. I don't know if there's a specific formula that I'm aware of that, specific employers are looking for this in particular. I've always been, sort of the consultative guy, but I think, there's, within that framework, there are some need-based opportunities. So for me, my approach to sales specifically is, number one, I need to know what I'm talking about. So I had to immerse myself in, the clinical aspects of my job. I'm not there to just, sell the next new shiny thing. I want to be a part of the surgical team. So I'm always a consultant. I'm there as a second eyes to, a neurosurgeon, or an orthopedic spine surgeon. That's what I do. So, and within that framework, obviously I will be able to, understand needs, but for me, consultative selling is more of the approach. But I think, I don't think there's a, right or wrong answer. I think, you can, do both. I don't know, Joe, if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I think it just comes from your overall personality too, right? Like there's going to be individuals that come from, a multitude of backgrounds, and I also think it's part of the organization that you're looking to interview for. So a number of key things, and I think you kind of led to that too, is making sure that you're well prepared and you're knowledgeable not only about your space, but also about the organization and what you're selling. So that's the first part of it, especially for those that are trying to get into the industry and are newly graduated, students. I would say make your resume very tailored to the job and the skill set at hand that you're interviewing for. Don't just use one resume for a multitude of jobs along the way, right? You can imagine there's a ton of resumes that I've seen over the years of interviewing individuals, and the ones that usually tend to stand out are the ones that are very specific and tailored to the skill set that's needed for that respective job. So I would say pay attention to your resume, make sure you're very clear on what you want and what you need as far as in a job, but also just as much as you're interviewing for the job, you have to think of the organization interviewing for you in your respective career, right? So like Shannon said, Medtronic has been the company he's been with since graduating from Stetson. He hasn't left yet. And a big portion of that is probably because it fit his career goals and aspirations. And so I would say make sure you do the same thing to try to align with an organization that has some of the things that you're looking for in your overall career. All right.
Darius, could you talk about some of the opportunities on the regulatory side and any trends you observed with what your companies are seeking for regulatory affairs? Joe, do you have?
Yeah, so with me, because I've had to, I work alongside with regulatory affairs within my organization. It's a very unique space. Those jobs come very few in between, but they are readily available. So what I would say is, if you are willing to move, and I'm not sure if Darius, if you're located in Florida or not, but typically those jobs are available where the corporate the corporate jobs are listed. So I know for me, it's, it will be in Chicago. Majority of the organizations are listed in New Jersey or even Boston. So, I mean, typically, if you're open to willing and relocating, it opens up your opportunity for, getting into that market.
And now, Alexander, how do you set yourself apart if you don't have a student athlete background? I mean, look, it's not just kind of that student athlete. My company, at least in sales, hires a lot of military folks as well, but they also hire people that don't have either one of those, experiences. So I think it's really just about setting yourself apart and, upgrading your skill sets in different areas that you can showcase. So, none of these jobs are easy, to get. A lot of people want to be in this space. So the more you can, upgrade your particular skill set and have it on your resume, the more opportunity you're going to have.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessary to be an athlete in order to get into the industry or break into the industry. Matter of fact, I think the way you're able to network and really understand what jobs come available before they hit the job market is a good place to start. And so some of those networking groups that, Shannon and I had on a previous slide, like the Healthcare Business Women's Association or the National Sales Networking Conference, have individuals there that have hiring capabilities that can identify jobs before they're actually posted, right? And the better that you're able to network and find a mentor, as well as a sponsor. So those are two different things. So you can identify a mentor that's in the business that you're looking for, that can really show your ropes, really understand what the job entails day in and day out. So that's a mentor. A sponsor will be someone that could then go to bat for you for a particular job because they understand who you are and the skill set that you have to bring. So I would say definitely try to identify a mentor and or a sponsor that's in the business if you're looking to embark or break through the ceiling, because they'll have great insights on what jobs that will be available, as well as join some of those networks that have individuals like yourself that have absolutely no experience, that have never, had a corporate job in general, that are able to get within the industry within 6 to 8 months. Sometimes less, sometimes a little more. It just kind of depends on the timing as well as the organization that's hiring.
All right. And are there any certifications you can recommend to improve my skill set and what I bring to the table? Already member of HBA.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, so I think it all depends on what that certification is. I think nowadays things are changing rapidly fast. So depends on the organization that you want to go into. If it's a organization that really focuses on continuous glucose monitoring, or if it's based on overall cancer care, maybe you want to get a certification in those respective markets. I know for me, based in nutrition, it's great to have a certification in dietetics. That always works on your behalf just because you understand really how the body works when it comes to nutrition. So I would say it all depends on the business that you're looking to embark in. And then that's where that mentor and then that sponsor comes in hand, where you can really ask them specifically, what works, what doesn't work. I know that Shannon and I, following this, will have our contact information. If you do have specific questions that you want to ask, I know Amy will be able to communicate back and forth with us, but we're definitely open and willing to share some of these guided experiences that we've had over the last 13, 14 years.
And I just want to add, so the best certification, Marie, is a proven track record, right? So I think it was you that was sort of speaking to you're trying to break into the industry, you have some sales experience. I mean, you have to show some sales excellence, and also you may have to take jobs with organizations that you may not want to, and you may have to take risks that you may not be you may not want to take certain risks, right? So my job that I had for many years, I was commissioned. I was only commissioned. That's how I got paid. It was commission only. So, that's most people, that sounds crazy, but that's exactly what we wanted, right? So, but there's certain organizations that you may want to look at that will gives people an opportunity. And so I think, track record is the best certification that you can have. And if we're talking about sales in particular, you got to sell yourself. That's the first product you have to master selling is yourself. And once you're in an interview setting, or even prior to an interview setting, you have to sell yourself. So, you're going to be able to find Joe and I on LinkedIn, and we're fairly active on there. But get your LinkedIn profile set up and start marketing yourself to potential employers. And I think that would be helpful to you. Dante, Shannon, did you always know that you wanted to go to medical device sale? When did you do to prepare for the university to get the job? So good question, Dante. So I did not. So I was actually probably going to go into finance. There were a couple of companies that I had interviewed with, and or large real estate commercial conglomerates. I was probably leaning towards going into that space, but I got a sort of random call from a guy who was my former high school soccer coach. This guy, after teaching, he left and went to Pfizer and went into pharmaceutical sales, and then after a few that, he went into medical device sales with Medtronic. He reached out to me, and this is a great guy, good old country boy from Alabama, and he called me up one day, and this is during the time I was in grad school at Stetson. He said, "Hey, I want to introduce you to my world and what I do, because I've been going to these national sales meetings for a couple of years now," and he said everybody looked like him. And he said that he felt that there needed to be more diverse candidates in his world, which was like cool. My coach is seeing that there could be room for somebody like me in his space. So he introduced me to this space. I did a ride with him. They actually wanted me to start a job, but I couldn't. I was in school, so they introduced me to something called the Apex program, which I had to interview for, and there were basically panel interviews with executives and kind of a crazy interview process. And luckily I was chosen as one of 5 recently graduate students to join this Apex program. And what I did to prepare for the interview is I did crazy research on the company. So we had an assignment in our MBA program at Stetson, and I focused the assignment on Medtronic. So I did a ton of research. I presented on Medtronic to the class, and this was throughout my interview process. So I knew more about the company than some people that were probably interviewing me. So that's how I prepared. And just generally speaking, how you prepare for an interview is do your research, practice, verbalize to yourself, to your significant other, or friends or family, whomever. Those are the best tools. But just going back to that, this new sort of promotion that I just received, I've never met my new bosses in person. I've never spoken to them. So what we're doing right now is exactly how I interviewed, and you just kind of have to be yourself in these interview processes. So that's the best advice I can give you in terms of interviewing. But that was my process, and I was not going into that. So do you recommend getting an MBA for? So I don't think it's necessary. For me, I thought it would help me stand out. So, super competitive field, super competitive market. I knew that if I had an MBA, no matter what role I went into, whether it be med advice or something else, my resume would probably stand out over the other people that, just graduated from college that wanted an opportunity. So that was my thought process. Is it necessary? No, I think I think most of my colleagues don't have an MBA, but I think it'll allow for me to have a smoother transition to to other leadership roles in the future.